The Russian Mafia, one of the most secretive and dangerous criminal organizations in the world, its very name conjures images of powerful men in expensive suits, pulling strings from the shadows of global finance and politics. But its real story, its true origin, isn't found in gleaming skyscrapers or high-stakes casinos. It was born in a much darker, colder place, the brutal prisons of the Soviet Union. Here, in the heart of a totalitarian regime, a new kind of criminal elite was forged in ice and suffering. They called themselves the vory, which translates to thieves-in-law. These men weren't just common criminals. They were the architects of a parallel society, a brotherhood bound by an unbreakable code of conduct. Their loyalty wasn't to a country or a government, but only to each other and to the unwritten laws of the criminal underworld. This is the story of how a prison subculture grew to challenge an empire and create a global criminal network. This is the story of power born in prison, while criminal gangs have existed in Russia for centuries. The organization we now call the Russian Mafia truly began to take shape under the iron fist of Joseph Stalin. His regime created the infamous Gulag system, a vast network of forced labor camps, stretching across the frozen tundra of Siberia. Millions were sent to these camps, from political dissidents to petty criminals, all thrown together into a brutal struggle for survival. In this frozen hell, a new social order emerged. The state's authority was absolute on paper, but inside the barracks and behind the barbed wire, a different power structure was taking hold. The most hardened and respected criminals began to organize. They developed a strict hierarchy and a set of rules that governed every aspect of their grim existence. Survival was the only goal. Theft, barter, and extreme cunning weren't just crimes. They were essential tools to see the next sunrise. These prisoners learned to operate as a cohesive unit, building a society with its own laws, leaders, and sense of justice, right under the noses of their guards. The Soviet system itself inadvertently created the perfect environment for this criminal culture to flourish outside the prison walls. The state controlled every aspect of the economy, leading to constant shortages of everything from food to basic consumer goods. This created a massive, thriving black market known as the tenovaya ekonomika, or shadow economy. People needed things the government couldn't or wouldn't provide, and a new class of underground entrepreneurs rose to meet that demand. Smuggling, bribery, and corruption became a way of life. If you wanted a good pair of shoes, a decent cut of meat, or even permission to move to a different city, you often had to go through legal channels. Those who mastered these channels, the black marketeers, the corrupt officials, the smugglers, gained immense power and wealth. The skills honed in the Gulag were perfectly suited for this new landscape. The criminal hierarchy that began in the prisons started to extend its influence into the wider world. With the vory at the very top, they were the generals, directing a growing army of local criminals, while corrupt state bureaucrats and even law enforcement officials were often co-opted or paid off, becoming unwilling cogs in the criminal machine. The brutal prison camps, meant to crush dissent, had instead created a highly organized and resilient criminal class. At the absolute pinnacle of this criminal world were the vory and the thieves-in-law. They weren't just leaders, they were seen as arbiters, judges, and living legends within the criminal fraternity. To become a vor was the highest honor, a status earned 3 years of unwavering commitment to the criminal life and a complete rejection of the legitimate world. Their authority was absolute, and their word was law. This authority was built on a foundation of strict and written rules known as the panyatya, or the understandings. The first and most sacred rule was to never cooperate with the state or its authorities in any capacity. A vor could not work a legitimate job, serve in the army, or even give information to the police, not even if it was to their own benefit. To do so was the ultimate betrayal, punishable by death. Their loyalty was sworn exclusively to the criminal organization. The brotherhood was everything. This code demanded that they contribute to a common fund, the obshek, which was used to support imprisoned members, bribe officials, and fund new criminal enterprises. They were also expected to resolve disputes within the criminal world, acting as mediators to prevent internal conflicts that could attract unwanted attention from the state. This strict code was reinforced by a rich culture of rituals and symbols. Intricate tattoos, for example, were not mere decoration. They were resume, a visual record of their criminal history, rank, and personal philosophy. A star tattooed on the knees meant I will never kneel before the authorities. A church with a certain number of domes could signify the number of prison sentences served. These tattoos were a language understood only by the initiated, a permanent mark of their identity and allegiance. Initiation ceremonies, known as coronations, were secret gatherings where a candidate's history was reviewed by other vory. If deemed worthy, they would be accepted into the elite, forever bound by the thieves' code. These rituals and symbols created a powerful, cohesive underground society, a nation within a nation that the Soviet state, for all its power, could never fully control or understand. This code allowed what were once small, disparate gangs to consolidate their power, control vast networks of illegal trade, and, most importantly, endure decades of brutal imprisonment and political repression, emerging stronger and more organized than ever before. Loyalty was everything, and their code was held far above any state law. The fall of the Soviet Union in 1991 wasn't just a political event, it was a seismic shock that created a massive power vacuum. As the old centralized system crumbled, the thieves-in-law, who had been operating in the shadows for decades, saw their moment. The chaos of the 1990s was their golden age. Russia embarked on a massive privatization program, selling off state-owned assets like factories, banks, and natural resources. For the criminal underworld, this was the sale of the century. Using violence, intimidation, and sheer audacity, these groups seized control of the nation's wealth. Imagine the Wild West, but with Kalashnikovs and Soviet-era industrial complexes. Gangsters roamed the streets of Moscow and St. Petersburg, and armed confrontations became a regular feature on the evening news. Violence wasn't just random. It was a business strategy. If you wanted a piece of a lucrative market, you didn't file paperwork. You sent a message with bullets. This wave of crime didn't stop at the street level. It seeped into the very fabric of the new Russia. Corruption and bribery became endemic, infecting politics, law enforcement, and the justice system. The police, underfunded and overwhelmed, were often powerless, and in many cases, complicit. This wasn't just organized crime, it was the birth of massive criminal syndicates, empires built on the ruins of a superpower, with their newfound wealth and power. Russian organized crime groups were no longer content with just dominating their home turf. The 1990s and early 2000s marked their aggressive expansion onto the global stage. Like multinational corporations, they diversified their portfolios into smuggling, drug trafficking, human trafficking, and sophisticated money laundering schemes. Their networks stretched across the globe, from the nightclubs of New York and London to the diamond markets of Israel and the bustling ports of Asia. They weren't just thugs anymore, they had become savvy international businessmen. Using a web of offshore banks and shell companies, they could move vast sums of money across borders, making it nearly impossible for law enforcement to trace. They learned to combine old-school violence with modern strategic investments, laundering their illicit profits through legitimate businesses like real estate, restaurants, and financial institutions. This evolution made them a formidable and elusive enemy for international agencies like Interpol. The Russian Mafia had officially gone global, projecting its dark influence far beyond Russia's borders. But the most disturbing evolution was yet to come. As the 2000s progressed, the line between the criminal underworld and the state began to blur. Certain powerful criminal groups forged deep connections within the Russian government and its intelligence agencies. This symbiotic relationship created what some analysts call Mafia state. In this model, organized crime wasn't just tolerated, it was integrated into the system. In exchange for a share of the profits and political loyalty, these groups received state protection and a free pass to operate. Law enforcement became a tool, used not to fight crime, but to eliminate rival criminal factions and consolidate the power of those allied with the state. Politically connected oligarchs and criminals gained control over strategic sectors of the economy, like energy and banking. This arrangement gave them immense wealth and influence, while also serving the state's interests. Some argue that this fusion of crime and state power became a way for Russia to project its influence abroad, using these networks for everything from intelligence gathering to political disruption. The power structure had become a complex web where it was often impossible to tell where the government ended and the mafia began. So, what does the Russian mafia look like today? Well, they're still very much active, incredibly resilient, and masters of adaptation. Think of it like a hydra. You cut off one head, and to more grow back, despite massive crackdowns, high-profile arrests, and global police efforts. These criminal networks just keep going. How do they do it? Their survival hinges on a few key things. First, they're decentralized. There's no single kingpin at the top of a pyramid anymore. Instead, it's a web of interconnected but independent cells. This makes them incredibly hard to take down completely. Second, they've mastered the global financial system. They move money through a maze of shell companies and offshore accounts, making it nearly impossible to trace. And third, they've gotten really good at blending in, infiltrating legitimate businesses from real estate to tech startups. You see police raids on the news, you see courtroom dramas, but these are often just the tip of the iceberg. The real action has moved online. Cybercrime, sophisticated online fraud schemes, and digital money laundering are their new favorite tools. It's less risky than old-school racketeering and can be even more profitable. International police forces do cooperate, and sometimes they score a big win, disrupting a major operation. But completely dismantling an entire network, that's a whole different ball game. It's like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands. They just adapt, regroup, and find a new way to operate. The game has changed, but they're still playing to win. So, as we wrap this up, it's clear the Russian mafia is far more than just a bunch of gangsters. It's a complex, living system that's deeply woven into the fabric of society, politics, and the global economy. It's a story that has unfolded over decades. A force that has survived the collapse of an empire, adapted to political chaos, and spread its influence across the world. From the grimy streets of post-Soviet Russia to the shiny financial capitals of today, its evolution is a dark reflection of our modern world. Understanding this shadow world is the first step toward confronting the challenges it poses. But for now, it remains a powerful, often invisible force, casting a long shadow that continues to shape our world in ways we're only beginning to understand. If you found this deep dive fascinating, make sure to subscribe to learn more about the hidden histories of organized crime. Thanks for watching.